Ghostbusters. The brave, the best, the only Ghostbusters.
So this is going to be a different type of video, and we're going to be looking at my pitch for a fantasy movie, a movie that does not exist. So we are going to be talking my idea for Ghostbusters 3. Now I'm going to base this on information that was available for a potential Ghostbusters 3 that Dan Aykroyd was thinking about and kind of tweaking it based on information that was available at the time. So we're talking about a true sequel to the Ghostbusters 1 and 2 movies. So this would have come out probably in the 90s at some point. So Dan Aykroyd's pitch for Ghostbusters 3 was called Hellbent, and it would have the Ghostbusters going to a hell version of Manhattan. Peter Venkman has died off screen and would be a ghost, and it would be a passing of the torch movie. But the studio felt this would be too expensive because to create a hellscape version of Manhattan would just be too expensive on a VFX wise. So I've taken that feedback, the feedback that it would be too expensive, and come up with a lower budget version of a movie where I think it would have elements that would be familiar to fans, but also something new. So this would take place a few years after Ghostbusters 2. I've also tried to parallel some real life themes into this kind of fantasy element. So if we have a look at the original idea of the Ghostbusters, was based on blue collar exterminators that deal with the paranormal. So this film opens with what appears to be Ghostbusters trying to catch a ghost. They're in shadows, they're whispering. We see figures that are dealing with a ghost. The reveal, it's not actually the Ghostbusters. At this point, unlike the second movie, the Ghostbusters had found success and are now a thriving business. As with real life and indeed the movie business, with success comes imitators, those who wish to replicate the success of the original and maybe improve upon it. So now in New York we have a rival group of ghost hustlers, perhaps called spirit blockers or entity eliminators. They are younger, more media savvy, and trying to garner their own success, fame and money by taking what worked with the original Ghostbusters in one step further. However, they are motivated by more financial and fame reasons rather than the more altruistic reasons like the original Ghostbusters. They are trying to appeal to a more modern demographic and trying to come across as cooler, edgy and more marketable. This is the first parallel really, highlighting the tendency to jump onto the bandwagon and make alternate products from pre-existing brands to try and diversify the market. They will be played by younger, up-and-coming comedians. One key difference in this group is they have developed their own tech, but it's obviously inspired by the original Ghostbusters. Their tech does not capture the ghosts, but permanently destroys them. This looks at our second parallel. The contract reflects exterminators using more humane methods to remove pests versus killing them. Or it could reflect the argument for incarceration versus capital punishment in the justice system. After all, ghosts, for the most part, were once living things. The difference in ideology frustrates our original Ghostbusters, who, for the most part, do not like their approach. This gives the Ghostbusters a group of human antagonists who are different to the previously bureaucratic human antagonists seen in the first two movies. It also gives some opportunity to have some comedy moments from the younger group of comedians. Around the end of the first act, the spirit blockers are trying to steal business from the Ghostbusters and intercept a caller a museum for a ghost. The spirit blockers arrive first to deal with the ghost. They have, however, also tipped the media to capture footage of their exploits. The third parallel spotlights celeb culture, setups caught on tape and reality television. However, the ghost was a bigger problem than first expected. The spirit blockers' reckless behaviour and desire to have spectacle for the media causes one of them to crash into an exhibition cutting themselves and accidentally having to put blood in an artifact. Our original Ghostbusters show up because their experience and greater knowledge of the spirit world are they're able to capture this ghost. This angers the spirit blockers, who feel undetermined by the Ghostbusters' triumph to try and front for the cameras meant for them. To try and salvage the situation to a degree, they blame the Ghostbusters for the damage of an ancient artifact, planting evidence to suggest it was the Ghostbusters and not in fact the spirit blockers who caused this significant damage. This tarnishes the Ghostbusters' reputation, and even though they have failed to destroy the ghost, the spirit blockers turn the situations into their favour and swaying favour from the masses. However, two things have happened at this point that they are unaware of. The chaos of the museum has got blood going into one of these artefacts which has awakened a dark force. I thought this is possibly could be a vampire originally, maybe even Dracula as he exists in the public domain. This would give the Ghostbusters a supernatural threat that cannot be solved with proton packs, slime blowers and things like that. However, Dracula may be too similar to Vigo the Carpathian from the second film, so it may need to be different but more of a corporeal villain. This would require our Ghostbusters to come up with a new plan and new tactics to defeat it. So perhaps it could be some type of ancient mummy or something along the lines of that. Some type of Egyptian curse. The second thing that happened is that one of our spirit blockers is feeling disillusioned and guilty about the carelessness at the museum and the fact that they've pinned it on the Ghostbusters. I would have this character be a younger female who is also smart and capable, and unbeknownst to her was only really hired because she would be a pretty face for the cameras. This will be the next parallel, the concepts of sex cells, using aesthetics to cover up tangible uses, and also some female hiring practices. This character would later go on in the film to reveal the Ghostbusters and the world that the spirit blockers are the ones who really cause the damage and were ultimately responsible for releasing the main supernatural threat. At the end of the movie, she would formally join the Ghostbusters, which would form part of Dan Aykroyd's original idea of having somewhat of a passing of the torch to younger cast members. The Ghostbusters, in the meantime, have fallen out of favour, and there is internal conflict within the group about what to do next, with members wanting to do different things. Some would want to move on, and some see it as just another setback and want to carry on, and others want payback. I'd avoid going to jail, getting locked up, as this was done in the first two movies, so the friction is more internal within the group and ended up with some sort of a disagreement where the group effectively are going on their separate ways, with one or maybe only two members left in active service, ending up with a very limited service and only doing kind of low-end jobs. At the end of the second act, I would have a full attack by our supernatural main bad guy, as the previously mentioned, some type of Egyptian entity or mummy type character. As the spirit blockers are now the #1 service in town, they are set to deal with it. However, due to their inexperience and arrogance and ultimately cowardice, they failed to stop it and are ultimately defeated. Possibly some are killed or otherwise incapacitated. Our supernatural bad guy has now won the first major encounter and their strength is now growing. At this point, the aforementioned female decides that she's going to take matters into her own hands. Go to the firehouse, admit what has been going on. I foresee possibly Ray or Egon being the ones still operating as Ghostbusters. A female character admits everything to the Ghostbusters and the press to reveal the truth. The remaining Ghostbusters still in active duty have been working on a way to defeat this menace since the fight with this entity and the spirit blockers. However, due to the lack of resources or manpower, the tech is limited and untested. Now it's time to reassemble the team, which would lead to some funny intended character moments along the way with our now female ex-spirit blocker, who is the only one to have fought the enemy and now must team up with the Ghostbusters and rally to face this threat. In the final battle there'll be a few hiccups, such as the tech losing power or not completely working. However, the team's ingenuity and teamwork managed to cobble together a solution to the problem and then ultimately work out defeating the enemy. A new female character is invited to become a full member of the Ghostbusters, spirit blockers are disbanded and we have a celebration. So this is more of an outline than an out-and-out script, and obviously it is a broad idea about my ideas, and there will obviously be things that we fleshed out. But that should give you the broad strokes of my idea for this fantasy threequel in the Ghostbusters universe. So what did you think, and would you like to see any more videos like this? Please do let me know, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.